Hello and welcome to the Power Hour podcast. I'm Scott Barrett. Alongside me is John Proctor. Johnny, what's going on?
What's up, man? Just ready for week 10.
Cool.
I see you're podcasting from a laying down position.
Dude, yeah, I just woke up. And so I'm getting like flashbacks from the Fan Vice podcast that I was fired from for always being hungover. Yeah, I don't like doing morning podcasts, man. I wish we podcasted last night, but unfortunately can't always get what you want. So we're gonna do it at about 1 p.m. Eastern Saturday here. Morning for me, though it is in the afternoon according to the clock. So Johnny, you had a few people you wanted to shout out, so I'll let you go ahead and do that.
Yeah, so we had Joe Pano had a pretty solid finish in the Millionaire Maker. Put together a nice lineup. I think a lot of people hopefully listened to us on Melvin Gordon. So he put together a lineup with Ingram and Melvin Gordon. Both of those guys were lower owned than they should have been and exploded. And Eric Ebron, who was a guy we talked about a lot. And then John Adams played in a late afternoon slate, had a top 1% GPP finish with Melvin Gordon, Michael Thomas, and Mark Ingram as well. So Ingram was a guy who really pushed people into some GPPs. And then I just wanted to, I got a lot of questions last week. We kept recommending Melvin Gordon as a GPP play as probably like the top running back play if you're playing GPPs, and people kept saying, he's supposed to be 20% owned. Why is that a GPP play? And I think people get a little caught up in ownership. You don't need a guy who's just 1% owned for him to be a good GPP play or 5% owned. It's just if a guy is lower owned than he should be. I think for our lineups, we had Gordon at like 40 or 50% of our lineups. And so if you think a guy is a really good play and his ownership is too low, then it makes him a GPP play by playing more of him than the field. You agree with me on that?
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point in like the big, top heavy with tons of entry tournaments, there is a case to be made to just fading a guy based purely out of ownership. And we'll get to that later when we talk about David Johnson. But again, that's not really when we're talking about a guy who's 20% owned. I also want to give a shout out to Scott Barrett and John Proctor, who had a pretty nice lineup or two last week as well. We did well. We won something. I don't know. What do we win?
We had a 6th place finish in the flea flicker, which was pretty solid.
Nice. All right. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. If fucking Jordy Nelson had just gotten in the goddamn end zone instead of running out of bounds, we would have finished in 1st place. But, I'm not angry about it.
We're angry. So I foregoed, if that's not a word, the intro to do something really fun that I wanted to do for a while. Our boy Pano at Paeno, Joe Pano on Twitter, made the official Power Hour podcast drinking game. And we haven't looked at it until right now. So we still haven't actually looked at it, but I'm pulling it up right now. I wanted to discuss it, make our listeners aware of the Power Hour podcast drinking game, and then we'll get to our plays for the day. Try and make this kind of quick. All right. So it starts off with a nice little picture of the logo Rummy designed for us, and it says, Dude Fantasy Bros Intro. Formerly known as DFB, aka your host, Scott Barrett, takes a few moments at the beginning of every podcast to pour out his heart and soul and some beers into his mouth That was my edit. To his loyal listeners, legend has it that even the great William Wallace stands on end as DFB courageously prepares his degenerates for battle. Julie, cue the bagpipes. And then editor's note from him. With all these Braveheart references, Scott needs to give the people what they want and rock a kilt on air. Maybe if we read this before Halloween. Whether it be an ode, elegy, sonnet, didactic poem, epithalamic, dude, I'm not pronouncing that. Come on, man. Or inspirational lyrics from the Notorious B.I.G., which I've done before. Please raise your beverages out of respect. Drink up loyal Power Hour degenerates and long live the. That is very sweet and a lot of different types of poems I didn't know exist. All right, and here we go. Power Hour cues for sponsors and shout-outs. Cheers and a chug. Okay, I like that. Johnny, a.k.a. Super Duper Man. I guess this is when you drink for all the times Johnny does something. Whenever Johnny does his crazy keyboard thing, which I guess is like your keyboard is super loud, Johnny, and it just sounds like you're like typing crazy fast, like in a mad panic. So do 2 sips for that. 1 sip for yeah. 2 sips for yeah, man. 3 for yeah, man. Yeah. Dude, that's so good. One shot or sip for he's interesting. 1 for I don't know, man. Another is player X is dead, was dead, will die, or might die. 1 drink for you and 1 drink for the player. Player X's resurrection is examples. Kenny Britt. There's 2 drinks for that. And then 3X bonus, 3-shot bonus is what he pronounces Jaguars like a rich old white guy, a.k.a. Jaguars. That's awesome. That was really good. All right, my turn. Scott, a.k.a. Dude Fantasy Bro. When he mispronounces a player's name, all right, of course, that happens multiple times every show. When he mispronounces a guest's name, that's 2 shots. His example is Elvin Silva, which I will never live down. And what's really bad is a fan of this show is in his listener league for the Feast, and his team name is Elvin Silva. Evan, if you're listening, I'm sorry. That wasn't me. Whenever I laugh at one of my own jokes, it happens a lot. I'm very funny. Plotter reference, hashtag plod life, hashtag plotter fetish. Definitely do that a lot. White wide receiver reference or hashtag grit. When I take a piss on air, you have to chug it until I get back. Terrible shirt. Use your best judgment, but the Cosby sweater is 2 shots. When I forget what I was going to say, that's a shot. That happens a lot. If he looks like he hasn't brushed his hair this week, that's this show and pretty much every time I'm on here. When I refer to myself as the looks of the operation, when I tell a fail story or a love life related fail story, that's a lot of them. You have to finish your beer. And then at the end, he goes, although Scott loves the limelight, he always, reluctantly, defers to the brains of the operation, John Proctor, to close out the pod. With a few final shameless plugs from affiliate sponsors and Twitter handles, Johnny sends us off, but wait, you forgot the fucking kickers again. Hashtag drink. Hashtag sorry, EOM. Do we cut that out of the iTunes?
No, we usually leave the kickers, but I try to cut us just bantering.
All right, and then for the diehard, like the super drunken degenerates, any Natty Light reference, any The Woat reference, any Sharon reference, Julie the Intern reference, you get a drink. If we almost forget the kickers, bottoms up. Longer than an hour, 30 minutes, you get a chug. And weekly secret bonus cues may be added weekly. without Scott and Johnny's knowledge. That's awesome. So Payne's going to edit this. This is hilarious. Really great job. You know that everyone's getting hammered each time I mispronounce someone's name. Very exciting.
All right, man. So if anyone's listening later tonight, join us for drinks. But you wanna walk this slate?
Yeah, let's do it.
So the first game we got is the Chiefs at the Panthers. Like very middle of the road, over under 44. Panthers are favored by 3. You can't run on the Panthers. Spencer Ware's back. Not really interested. Still trying to figure out what to do with the Chiefs wide receivers. You got Tyreek, you got Albert Wilson, you got Chris Conley. Depending who you talk to, everyone thinks one of them is the play. Not sure if any of them are the play. Travis Kelce's in a good spot. Panthers aren't all that great against the tight end. Cam has been kind of like bad this year. Chiefs really stopped the tight end. They've struggled against the run. But then Kelvin Benjamin probably will line up against Phillip Gaines most of this game. So who all are you interested here on for this game, Scott?
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I keep hearing Kelsey's the guy, and we need to be really excited about Kelsey just because Jeremy Macklin's out. But, Macklin sat out in week 7 of 2015, and he played just 2 snaps last week. Travis Kelce saw just 13 targets over those 2 games. I'm not really sure if I feel good about any of these wide receivers. Someone's probably going to get a bump in volume, but just like off of name brand, like I don't feel good about playing Albert Wilson or Chris Conley or Tyreek Hill, who's averaging like 25% of the snaps. I'm probably avoiding all these guys for the most part. Kelvin Benjamin's in a nice matchup, so he's fine. Greg, like more other tight ends in better spots.
Yeah, I think if I had to pick one of the wide receivers, it might be Albert Wilson, but even then, Conley and Wilson saw the highest snap bumps. Tyreek only still played about 50% of the snaps. And then, right, like TJ just said, it's Alex Smith, so good luck figuring out. But you can't run on the Panthers, so they're not going to be able to run the ball. I really like Benjamin a lot this week. I think the Chiefs are good at taking away the tight end. Eric Berry plays really strong defense against the tight end, and I think the Panthers are gonna have to throw the ball a little bit. They aren't the greatest rushing team, but I think Jonathan Stewart's another interesting one. I think he'll probably be low owned, though I'm just not really all that excited about this game. I don't think.
To me, like I keep hearing Jonathan Stewart being touted as like a really interesting GPP play. I'm just like. I think he's like Carolina's LeGarrette Blount, where I'm not excited to play him unless they're favored by like 7 or more points. And this game's actually kind of close, so not really about that.
Yeah, I think he's just like an okay play. He does have multi-touchdown upside. That's like the perk for him, but he really hasn't been running all that well, and he's seeing like no targets in the passing game. So I get what you're saying there. And you also have to remember that like one of his big games came against the Saints, and it wasn't even, a huge game. He had like 85 yards, but he had 2 touchdowns. Okay. So the Texans I'm just going to call them the Jags. This one's an interesting one because the line opened for the Texans. It's moved towards the Jags. And then it's moving down. So the over-under is on its way down. Even though it looks like 70% of the tickets are coming in on the over. So this is a game where it looks like there's sharp money on the under. These are 2 bad teams going up against each other. So I don't like anyone on the Texans other than Lamar Miller. The Jags are a bad rushing defense, but a pretty good passing defense. Though I'm not all that excited about Miller because this, it just doesn't look like the Texans are going to be able to score all that much. It's not a good matchup for Bortles. Houston's one of the top passing defenses in the league. If Hearns were to miss this game, I think Marquise Lee is probably an okay play because he's cheap, should see volume. And I see a lot of talk on Chris Ivory, and I'm just not really on him all that much. Prior to this 18 carry game, he had 4 carries, 5 carries, 11 carries over those weeks. And even with his 18 carries, he scored 13.7 DraftKings points. So I'm not really all that excited about him. I mean, Houston is worse against the run than they are against the pass, but I don't know. You never know when Yeldon's going to get more carries. What do you think, Scott?
So I do think it is interesting. So the head coach before last week's game said they were going to commit to the run more, and they actually did that. They said they're going to keep going with it. So there's good reason to suspect that continues this week. So like we talk about funnel defenses all the time. Defenses vulnerable against the pass, but really good against the run. The Texans are kind of the reverse of that. The only team worse than them is the Broncos, but the Texans are actually really close right there behind them. They're giving up I know Denver is giving up the 4th most rushing yards per game and the fewest passing yards per game. I think the Texans are something like the 5th most rushing yards per game and like the 2nd or 4th fewest passing yards per game. Definitely that's how you attack them. The price is there. Still not incredibly excited about him. Don't think he gets too much work as a receiver. Marquise Lee, you're right. That's probably the only other guy I'm too excited about. It's kind of a tough matchup for both Will Fuller and DeAndre Hopkins. Ramsey's been playing well. He's going to shadow Nuck. And then Prince Amukamara, who, I always say is super underrated when he's on the field. It's just rare that happens. He'll be on Fuller, and he's fast and should be all right.
Yeah, and I think both of these defenses are in play. The Texans are probably a higher projection, but they are more expensive than the Cardinals. So I think they're a way to differentiate off of the Cardinals in tournaments. Cards should be the highest owned defense. And then the Jaguars are just almost the bare minimum on DraftKings. I think they're a good play against Osweiler, though Osweiler hasn't really been taking risks the last few weeks. So I think he's not as turnover. He's not doesn't project for as many turnovers as he had in the beginning of the season, but he does take sacks. So they're in play. But yeah, I think Ivory's a tournament play. You're hoping for the 100-yard bonus and a touchdown, but I don't think he has a receiving ceiling at all. Yeldon saw 6 targets, I think, and I don't know if Ivory saw any. So in a game where they're projected to lead, I think you could use Ivory in a tournament, but I'm just not sure he has a 20-point ceiling. Anything else you want to throw in?
I will say this. Yeah, the last time Allen Robinson played without Allen Hearns on the field, he scored 43 fantasy points.
Yeah. Let's 2015 Allen Robinson is dead.
That's right. Yeah.
But no, he had a good game last week, but this is a tough matchup. The Texans are really stingy against the pass.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. All right. So Broncos at the Saints. This is a weird one too. The total is going up. Though I don't really see how the Broncos are projected to score 23 points, which is kind of crazy to me. Booker is going against the Saints defense. He burned everyone last week. He looked pretty terrible. They've mentioned Capri Bibbs is going to see some more work. I'm not sure I really buy that. He only played a handful of snaps. New Orleans they just can't tackle people though. So I think the yards after catch type players on the Broncos are interesting. Both Sanders and Demaryius are guys who can get yards after the catch, but people continue to want to play them every week, so they continue to have decent prices. Demaryius is 6,700, Sanders is 6,800, and they continue to just not be able to meet those salary expectations. So not sure I'm really on them. Trevor Siemian has busted in pretty much every good spot he has had. I see talk of wanting to use him this week. I just don't think, I will play bad quarterbacks against the Saints. Colin Kaepernick, who I think have upside. I don't think Simeon has upside. And then Breeze, I don't play quarterbacks or pass catchers against the Broncos. I'm not really interested in them, though they have some cornerback injuries. Just not really all that excited about it. I'm sure Michael Thomas will be popular. I'd much prefer to look at Ingram and Hightower. Broncos are just getting torched on the ground. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm on Ingram and Hightower, and both of them are crazy low owned on Fantasy Aces on Thursday. Ingram was 2%, Hightower was 1%, and I think that's because right now it's an obnoxious committee. Ingram had the better day, but he also was outsnapped and outsnapped and out-touched by Hightower. So, people don't really want to mess with that too much. I think Hightower, I think Ingram is probably the better play, and I think most people think that too, but I'm fine kind of like splitting shares down the middle between these two guys. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think Hightower probably will be the lower owned of the two, and he's a little cheaper. So, yeah, I don't think you want to go like all in on these guys or play them in cash games, but I think you need to have tournament exposure to both of them because Saints are probably going to win this game. They're at home. So really like them. Other than that, not really all that interested. I think Michael Thomas is, the wide receiver one in New Orleans now, but I'm not going to pay $6,000 for a wide receiver against the Broncos. We saw it with Mike Evans. I'm not going to do it.
Yep.
Anyone else you're interested in this one?
Nope.
Okay. All right. Vikings at the Redskins. This is a game that I am really sort of interested in how I want to take care of it. Diggs, I think, is going to be.
All right, you hold on. All right, you make the case for Crowder. I make the case for Reed, and then we'll both make the case for Diggs.
Okay. So Crowder's a guy that I really like. I think I might even be considering him for cash games this week. Captain Munnerlyn, the slot cornerback for the Vikings, is out. The Vikings have struggled against interior pass catchers this season. They struggle against running backs. They've been up and down against tight ends. Munnerlyn's been really good in the slot. He's going to be gone. And Crowder should see snaps on the outside this week because Deshaun Jackson is going to miss this game. So I think we should see Crowder see 7, 8, 9, 10 targets. And when a guy is going to get that kind of volume for 5,000, especially a guy who's used in the red zone, I'm in on him. And what's so interesting is the 1 week that Crowder busted was the week that everyone was on him. And now people just aren't really using him. So really like him in this spot.
Okay, so Jordan Reed was 2% owned on Thursday. Over his last 3 games, he's averaging 11.3 targets, 8.7 receptions, 75 yards, and 1.0 touchdowns per game. That comes out to 22.2 fantasy points per game. That's 5.9 fantasy points per game and 6.3 targets per game, more than any other tight end over their previous 3 games. Actually, over their last 3 games, only 10 total receivers are averaging more fantasy points per game, and only 8 are averaging more targets per game. Yet, Reed is somehow just the 24th highest priced tight end or wide receiver on DraftKings, where you can also start him as a tight end in the flex. Minnesota's been really good against opposing passers, allowing the 4th fewest receiving fantasy points per game. But they've been most vulnerable to tight ends. 24% of the receiving fantasy points allowed has gone to tight ends, which ranks 8th most. With Deshaun Jackson out, it wasn't the case last season. The stats don't bear it out, but he could be in for a bigger workload. And he's already like the nuts workload tight end right now.
Yeah, I mean, I like Jordan Reed this week, but my concern is that Eric Kendricks is back. I think that hurts a little bit. They got busted up by tight ends the last 2 weeks with Kendricks injured. He played like half the game against the Bears, and he played none of the game last week when Eric Ebron went off. But they are definitely more susceptible in the middle of the field. That's where they struggle. And their outside cornerbacks they funnel targets to the middle of the field. So Reed always has the upside. He's a nice pivot off Gronk, who I think will be really highly owned in tournaments. But like him, don't love him. Reed, I don't know. I just struggle to pay up for tight end this season. But he obviously has 30-point upside, and there's only 2, maybe 3 tight ends that have that every week. And this game should be low scoring. I really like the Redskins defense. And then are we both in on Diggs? I think we saw that the team finally is doing with him what they should have been doing the whole year. He played mostly in the slot, so he should avoid Josh Norman. He's seen 13 and 14 targets in back-to-back weeks. He's healthy. And I think he's a little underpriced for the volume he's getting. He's sort of the better Jarvis Landry right now. What do you think?
I think that's exactly right. Over the past 2 weeks, he ranks 3rd in targets with 26, 1st in receptions with 21, 7th in receiving points with 156, and 3rd in PPR scoring, averaging 22 points per game over those 2 weeks. On DraftKings, his price is just $200 since week 2. He used the 21st and 22nd highest priced wide receiver on DraftKings and FanDuel, respectively. People are going to be worried about a Josh Norman shadow, but Josh Norman doesn't move to the slot. He's been there on just 3% of his routes in coverage over the past 2 seasons. Diggs runs 58% of his routes from the slot over the past 2 weeks. Instead, he's going to get Washington's rookie slot corner, Kendall Fuller, who earned his first start in week 4. Since then, he has seen 28 targets, allowing 22 receptions for 200 touchdown. He ranks 12th worst among all cornerbacks and 3rd worst among slot cornerbacks from a fantasy points per snap basis. Pretty much just everything just pointing to Diggs going off, and I agree with that.
Yeah, and then I know a lot of people want to play Rob Kelly. I'm just not all that excited about playing a back who doesn't catch passes against the Vikings. They are a very good run defense. I know they got shredded by Jordan Howard, but I don't think that's the norm. I think that was a little bit of a fluke. I think if you're going to look at a running back on the Redskins, I think Chris Thompson's really interesting. I think he could see some extra work as a pass catcher since Deshaun is out. And the Vikings are just getting blown up by receiving running backs. So although they didn't happen with Theo, but I don't know why. So Chris Thompson, a little interesting. Redskins D is a play I really, really like. I think that the Vikings are going to take sacks, and one of these times that's going to result in, it going the other way. Any other thoughts on this one?
Nope.
Yep. All right. So Packers, Titans. This one is projected for a pretty high total. Looks like between 49.5, 50 points, depending where you look. Packers are favorited by 3. I like Rodgers. I like Jordy. I think people are going to be a little off Rodgers this week after he didn't quite hit the ceiling they were expecting. Good luck figuring out what's going on.
He still had a great day.
Yeah, he had a good game, but it was similar scoring to Breeze and Kaepernick, so people were mad about it. But they went back to their old offense. They weren't running that 5 wide thing that they were doing that was successful. I think there's a possibility they go back to that this week. If they do, then Rodgers will probably be a better play than his price entails. If they continue to do what they did last week, then Rodgers will probably stink again. But I don't think Starks is in line for.
He didn't. All right.
Dude, he looked terrible.
First of all, from a fantasy perspective, he totally didn't stink. He threw the ball 40 times. He was 3 yards away from hitting 300 yards. He threw 3 touchdowns. He rushed the ball 6 times for 43 yards. But yeah, I agree that people consider that a letdown because everyone, paid up for him in cash. Mariota outscored him. I think Rodgers, scored the third most fantasy points last week. They viewed it as a disappointment, but in strict fantasy terms, I don't think it was.
Dude, he completed 60% of his passes against the Colts. That was a bad outing. The receivers were not getting open. That's why he was running the ball so much. They were using Richard Rodgers as a running back. Like that, dude, it was a fucked day. I don't know what the Packers were doing.
But Ty Montgomery played like 50% of the snaps, ran like 50% of the snaps.
That's what I'm saying. Like they are like a mess when it comes to play calling. I don't know what they're doing. It's so confusing. It's so stupid. And that's why, like, you know, Devontae Adams, what's his role going to be? Good luck. I mean, it was crazy to me that everyone was so excited about Devontae Adams when they said Randall Cobb was going to play. I don't want Devontae Adams if there are 4 other people catching the ball on that team. Like, I don't think he's a good player. We wanted him when the volume was there, so I'm not interested in him this week. Ty Montgomery, if we get news that he's going to play all the snaps, sure, I think you can play him, but good luck figuring it out. And then on the other side of the ball, but I think Jordy is a really good play, especially because they went back to like targeting him deep down the field and in the red zone. So Mariota is probably going to be the highest owned quarterback this week. I think there's good reason for it. Except I think on FanDuel, he's a little more expensive. I think you can go other ways.
Yeah, you're jumping around too much. Can we go back to the Packers?
Okay, who do you want to play on the Packers?
All right, so Aaron Rodgers over the last 3 weeks has 84 fantasy points. That's 14 more fantasy points than the next closest quarterback. He's really been kind of lighting it up. I think he's a fairly safe option. I agree with Johnny that I think an issue is kind of that it's kind of hard to predict who's going to get the bulk of his production. I think Jordy Nelson is probably the safest bet, but I really like Randall Cobb talking about him. So he came back from a hamstring, missed the entire first half, didn't play, but it looks like he's going to be closer to his full complement of snaps this week. In his last 3 games, he saw 36 targets and 6 carries. And he runs about 80% of his routes from the slot, which means he should see Bryce McCain, first slot cornerback in the league this year. For the season, no cornerback has allowed more fantasy points than McCain when covering the slot. Opposing quarterbacks are averaging a 137.4 passer rating, which ranks second worst among all cornerbacks, ranks 4th worst in fantasy points per target. Cobb owns him the last time he played, caught 5 of 6 balls for 79 yards. I kind of like Cobb this week. What do you think about that, Johnny?
I mean, I kind of like him. Though the last, so his big weeks, when let's see, when they played Chicago, I believe Ty Montgomery was, let's see, Ty Montgomery was playing running back, and then you had Cobb in the slot, and then never mind, I'm confusing that for the wrong week. No, I think Cobb is definitely interesting when he's trying that slot role, though I think it's a little bit of a knock that he's going to lose some of that running back work that he was getting like in week 5 and week 6 that Ty Mo is now getting. But he did have a big game in week 7 with Ty Mo playing running back. Ultimately, I just think it's like really hard to project who's going to have that big game. But I think Rodgers is going to have a good game, and I think one of his receivers is. So if I'm picking a receiver, I would prefer to pick between Jordy and Cobb. I'm not really interested in Devontae Adams. I'm not all that interested in Ty Montgomery anymore, especially with Starks possibly coming back. Unless Starks is out and they are guaranteeing us, you know, Ty Mo is going to be a full-time player. So yeah, I'm with you on
Starks.
Yeah, I'm not touching Starks. I don't think he's going to play all that much at all. And the Titans are better against the run than they are against the pass. So Titans side, Mariota should be the chalk, which makes sense. Though I'm not as interested in him in tournaments. Then Rashard Matthews is a really popular talking point this week. People want to play Rashard Matthews in cash games. I'm seeing. He's seeing, you know, he is the wide receiver 1, but his targets are very, very up and down. 3 targets in week 6, 7 targets in week 7, 4 targets in week 8, 10 last week. Good luck projecting his targets. I mean, he could see 3, he could see 5, he could see 10. I don't know. And then DeMarco Murray, not sure he's healthy. He did not look very good last week. I think the toe thing might be more than they're letting on. Derrick Henry should play this week. I think that hurts him. And it's a bad matchup. And then Delaney Walker, I think, is in play as well, though he seems to just constantly be hurt. So not sure how healthy he is. Who do you like on the Titans?
Yeah, I think that's a good point on Delaney. Always like Delaney. I just like Reed and Eifert, who we'll get to a lot more at similar price points. Murray, just because no one's playing him. His ownership was at 1% on Thursday. You're right. He didn't look great last week. He wasn't efficient. He rushed for 52 yards on 14 carries. In his prior 2 games, he had 237 yards and 2 touchdowns on 46. But he still got those 7 targets, 7 receptions, which kind of proves that he's somewhat matchup proof just because of how heavily he's used as a receiver. The toe injury, I don't think is a concern. He played on over 95% of the snaps last week. He's not on the injury report this week. And Green Bay's defense is kind of unraveled over the past few weeks. So I should say Murray ranks 3rd among running backs in fantasy points per game and 5th in targets per game. Dallas in week 6 gave up Green Bay in week 6 gave up 19.6 PPR points to Dallas running backs. Week 7, Chicago didn't really do much against them. Then in week 8, without Tevin Coleman, Atlanta put up 28.5 running back PPR points against them. And last week, the Colts put up 27.3 running back PPR points against them. So I think just at his ownership, I think he makes for a nice little contrarian play.
I think you should flesh that out, though. Running backs have not, outside of Zeke, they haven't run well against the Packers. They're allowing a really low yards per carry. Frank Gore had 2 touchdowns, I believe, at the goal line.
No, Gore wasn't really efficient last week, but Chicago still had 4.1 yards per carry. Atlanta had 4.8 yards per carry. And the last 2 weeks we've seen.
I mean, running backs have struggled against them, man.
As a team, the average 4.1 yards per carry. Then the last 2 weeks, we've seen a combined 10 receptions, 67 yards through the air, and a touchdown.
Yeah, it's the PPR receiving work that you want to look at. But I honestly think.
But Murray's going to get that.
I think there is something wrong with DeMarco Murray.
He's off the injury report.
Yeah, they also said his MRI was fine, and then they said, well, maybe it wasn't. And Derrick Henry didn't. The reason DeMarco Murray was involved so much last week is because Derrick Henry didn't play. He got hurt in warmups, so he's going to be there this week. I'm off Murray. I'm done. He's seen so much work. He banged up the toe. If it's turf toe, it's not going to be something that he's going to just recover from. It was enough to get an MRI. Struggled last week, really struggled. He looked really bad running the ball. He averaged 4 yards per catch. I can't do it, man. Can't do it. He lucked into a touchdown to really save his value on the week last week.
He got that goal line carry, and he's going to get that regardless. He was actually PFF's 5th highest graded running back last week. He forced 3 missed tackles on the ground, and I think an additional 2 through the air. That's right. And a lot of his yards came after contact. So I don't know that he was, at least statistically, play that well.
I mean, he didn't look very good. I can tell you that. According to me, I don't know, but I guess I'm not hired to give PFF grades. But I think I think if and when Henry is healthy and fully going, I think he's going to see more and more work. And I think we were starting to see that before he missed the game last week. So I'm, starting to look like something that might turn into more of a committee. Guy had an MRI on his toe. That's just not a player that I'm interested in using, especially when I think there are better plays in that price range. So, but I think that's enough to talk about Murray. He's a guy I'm probably going to have zero exposure to. So Bears at the Bucks. I think Alshon Jeffrey is the top wide receiver play on the week. I think Jay Cutler's interesting, though I don't like him as much at this point as I did early in the week. 83% of the tickets are coming in on the over for this game, but the total has not moved. I think it might have moved half a point or not at all. Mike Evans probably is your highest raw projected wide receiver, though he's expensive on both sites. Jordan Howard is a little interesting, though I believe Jeremy Langford is back. Zach Miller I like, but not as much as Alshon. And then if Doug Martin misses, I'm all over Peyton Barber. Where are you at on this one, man?
Definitely agree with the last two things you said, all over Peyton Barber if Doug Martin doesn't play. Like Zach Miller, not as much as Alshon, who I really do love. Like very quietly has 31 targets over his last 3 games. His last game, Jay Cutler was back at quarterback, first time since week 2. Jeffrey caught 4 passes for 63 yards and a touchdown. That's against Minnesota, whose secondary has been really good. Cutler's return kind of makes a really big deal. This season, 25% of Cutler's total attempts and 40% of his attempts in the red zone have been directed towards Jeffrey. For perspective, when that was Brian Hoyer, it was only 20% of his targets and 10% of red zone targets. He's pretty cheap. He's only the 15th highest priced wide receiver on DraftKings. But what's really excited about this is that he's up against Tampa Bay's secondary. It's like super susceptible through the air. They're giving up the 30 or more yards to opposing wide receivers. But like the big takeaway is the cornerback he's going to be matched up against on the majority of his routes, and that will be Vernon Hargreaves.
Yeah, he's going to make it.
So Hargreaves is their starting right cornerback. Jeffrey lines up to Cutler's left in about 50% of his routes. Hargreaves is a 21-year-old rookie. He's PFF's second worst graded cornerback this season. Only 3 cornerbacks have given up more fantasy points into their coverage this season. His 7 missed tackles rank 5th worst among all corners. He's giving up the 6th most yards per snap in coverage, the 14th most fantasy points per route in coverage. Over the past 2 weeks, he's seen 27 targets. He's given up 19 receptions, 298 yards, and a touchdown. For perspective, that's 5 more targets, 3 more receptions, and 98 yards more than any other cornerback in that span. He's been really bad, and I think Alshon's going to torch him.
Yeah, and he's why I wanted to play Cooper, and you fought me. But yes, this is the spot, man. Hargreaves is bad. Julio torched him. Alshon gonna torch him too. As for this game, though, I don't think it's a game you really want to stack up. Total's low. It's not going up, even though people are betting up. And there's a possibility that Evans is a guy who the Bears will focus on coming out of their bye. He's sort of the whole offense for the Bucks. So I think Peyton Barber is a guy I really like. And then, if Doug Martin is out, Peyton Barber should assume a 3-down role, and the Bucks have shown they have zero issue just running a guy to death. We saw it with Jaquiz. Though they tried to put together a little committee last week, and then Anton Smith died. So now it's the Peyton Barber show, unless Martin plays. But I have a feeling he's not going to play. How do you feel about Cutler, Scott? I'm not as interested in Cutler as I was to start this week. It's a low total. I think if I want a pass catcher, or if I want a receiving skill option in this game, it's Alshon. Not really sure I'm as interested in Cutler. I mean, do you like him all that much?
I don't know. Tampa's just been so bad the past 2 weeks. I'm good with him. Not my favorite GPP play.
Right.
probably not my favorite cash play.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Okay. All right. Next game, Falcons, Eagles. This is another one that has a little bit of Vegas line stuff going on. There's over 80% of the tickets coming on the over. It hasn't really moved. The spread initially opened for the favoring the Eagles. It quickly moved towards the Falcons. The Eagles are a good pass defense, but they have bad cornerbacks, which if the Falcons do the quick slants to Julio, he's just going to torch these guys. We saw it with Beckham. He housed one of his little Beckham quick slants, which Julio does too, like right away last week for the Giants. And then it looks like Jacob Tammy's out again. Hooper played really well in his first start. The Eagles are good against the tight end, though. They have strong linebackers. They have good safety play. So I think he's somebody that people might be on, but I'm not sure I want to play him. And then Devonta Freeman now has had, 10 days rest, I think, something like that. So I think there's a chance that he's healthier than he has been. He's been losing snaps to Teron Ward. Not sure that's going to happen as much this week with him probably recovered from the hip pointer, though it's still a concern that they're using a little bit of a committee approach. People want to use Wentz in tournaments. Not so sure I'm interested in him or not. I like Ertz and Matthews both, and then I think Sproles is a nice play on DraftKings, but not on FanDuel. Where are you at?
Yeah, I like Sproles a lot. I also like Matt Ryan. He's just playing lights out. It's really him and Brady and no one else coming close for the season. Props to Kyle Shanahan for kind of turning last year. And the Eagles have probably the league's worst starting cornerback, which makes me like, Sanu and Julio Jones and maybe even Taylor Gabriel. They're able to mask it kind of with a good pass rush. But I could see Matt Ryan kind of exploiting them this week. All four of their cornerbacks grade out among our bottom 25 worst cornerbacks in coverage. Leotis McKelvin was benched last week for Jalen Mills. McKelvin, when passers are targeting him, average a 128.1 passer rating, which ranks sixth worst among all cornerbacks. And he's actually Philadelphia's highest graded cornerback, the guy they benched. And Mills, the guy who took over, is our overall worst graded cornerback. So like that side of the field is going to be very vulnerable, which is where Taylor Gabriel spends about 53% of his time. He's like 3,300 on DraftKings. He has 8 targets, 8 catches, and 120 yards and a touchdown over the past 2 weeks. So he was the punt play, the super punt play I recommended this week. But really, you got to like everyone in this matchup. All of Philadelphia's corners have played bad. They are bad. And Kyle Shanahan moves Julio Jones around the line of scrimmage a lot. So he definitely should be able to take advantage of these embarrassing cornerbacks.
Here's my concern for Sanu and Gabriel. The Falcons, they game plan week to week specific formations, offensive formations. When teams have heavy pass rush, they run really heavy tight end units. They will use 3 or even 4 tight end sets with 1 wide receiver or even sometimes none. So I think we're going to see a lot of just Julio on the field and lots of tight ends. So I think we may see one of those weeks where, Sanu and Gabriel are lower in snap percentage than you want to see from a wide receiver. So that's a concern for me. And I think that's a plus for Freeman. I think they're going to run some heavy sets. At least I would expect them to. They're the only team in the league that does that uses 3 or 4 tight ends. Or I guess Patrick DeMarco is a fullback, but they use him like a tight end, whatever. What are you doing, dude? The Ertz thing, I don't know what to do with Ertz. I can never get him right. He saw 8 targets last week. Falcons are really bad against the tight end. just like on FanDuel, he's 4,600. Like he's 100 over minimum. He's a really good play over there, but I don't know what his like actual projection is in this game.
Yeah, I'm fine with him. He had a good matchup last week. He has a just better matchup this week. Not someone I'm super excited about, but he's definitely in play.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel. And then I think Jordan Matthews is a good play. It looks like Trufant probably will not play. If Trufant is out, then okay, yeah, Trufant's been ruled out. So
Trufant's not going to cover him in the slot, though.
He's moved into the slot this season before.
Trufant?
Yeah.
Not much.
I'm pretty sure he has. But against the Eagles, where the outside corners are like legitimately bad, I don't see why he wouldn't. So yeah, Trufant's played 20% in the snap this year in the slot.
18%. Yeah, 18%.
That's a lot.
Yeah, I don't see him shadowing Jordan Matthews into the slot. PFF isn't projecting that either.
I want to say though,
he could play. Yeah,
PFF has been bad at picking their shadowing this season. He shadowed Doug Baldwin on 22 of 36 routes, and that was in the slot. So I think he would have followed Matthews, man. But he's not going to play.
There's at least an argument, but it doesn't matter anyway because he's not playing. And Atlanta's already giving up the second most fantasy points per game to receivers out of the slot. So it's like a great matchup for him.
Yeah, I like Matthews a lot. He's so hard, but I mean, it's like he's seeing so many targets over the last few weeks. Like the Eagles have finally realized like Nelson Aguilar and Dorial Green-Beckham are like legit trash. So the guy has seen 25 targets over his last 2 weeks. He's playing okay. He's using the red zone. They're going to have to throw the ball. Matthews is a good play this week. I think he's a similar play to Diggs.
A big reason why he's getting that increase in workload is because since like that started, it's been against a lot of the teams that are worst against slot receivers, like Dallas, the New York Giants, all ranked bottom 5, or they're giving up the like top 5 most fantasy points per game to opposing slot receivers. They're all teams that struggle against the slot. They're weak up the middle, have a bad nickel corner, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think he's a good play. I think he's a similar play to Stephon Diggs. I think they have similar target projections this week and similarly good matchups. But Sproles, like, yeah, you can use Sproles in cash. I have concerns for him in tournaments. I think his touchdown projection is very low every week. He's not used at the goal line. They bring in Ryan Matthews when they get within the 5. So that's a big knock for him. But Atlanta gets hurt by receiving running backs, and he's seen like 16 targets over the last 2 weeks. So he makes a lot of sense. But he's not as great of a play on FanDuel without the full PPR. Anything else on this one?
Nope.
All right. So next game, which pretty much has not all that much to it. The Rams of the Jets. I think you can use either of these defenses against the other team because it's just a gross game. I think you can use Kenny Britt again. I think Brian Quick is a little interesting in tournaments because he's so cheap and his snaps are like way up on the rise. Lance Kendricks, they have been sort of phasing Tavon down a little bit and moving Lance Kendricks and Brian Quick more into the rotation. Kendricks is 3K on DraftKings. He has 12, 9, and 8 targets over his last 3 weeks. He's used heavily in the red zone. And the Jets, you can't run on the Jets. You have to throw on them. They're susceptible to the pass against tight ends and wide receivers. So Kendricks is a guy. He's probably one of my top picks for a cash game tight end. He's going to be really popular. Not all that interested in him for tournaments, though I think you can definitely play him. And then I don't really like any of the Jets. Maybe Matt Forte, but he doesn't really make me all that excited. Where are you at, man?
Yeah, this is gross. Lowest over/under of the week. Just gross.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess you can play Forte, home
Right?
favorite. Huh? What?
Tremaine Johnson's out again. Tremaine
Um,
Johnson.
is he? He's been like off and on hurt all year. I just never know when he's playing. Like, I guess you could
If
try
he's
and
out,
use Marshall.
that means he gets EJ Gaines, who's just been so bad. He's giving up the third most fantasy points per route and coverage, 18th most fantasy points per target. Like quarterbacks are going out of their way to heavily target him. They're attempting 22% of their aimed throws against him, which ranks second most among corners. He's just really bad, and you should see him for half the game if Tremaine Johnson's out.
Yeah, I don't. I'm just out on Marshall. I'm like out on the Jets passing game. Just looks so bad. And then like a Nunwa, he's either going to score 20 or he's going to score 4, and Marshall's just going to score 11 every week.
Some positive touchdown regression should be coming for both of them. Marshall's leading the league in end zone targets. Quincy Enunwa has dropped 3 end zone targets this season.
That's the thing, though. They're playing so poorly. Like Marshall looks really bad. He looks slow. He looks old. Like I think it's finally.
Oh yeah, and the quarterback play is bad too. Sure.
Yeah. It's just gross. I just don't see the upside there. But yeah, I like Britt and Kendricks again this week. I think they're both in play, but I wouldn't want to have both of them on the same lineup. I don't think they have all that much upside. But yeah,
Gurley's
as I found
catching
out,
passes now.
huh? Gurley?
Gurley's catching passes now.
Yeah, but are you going to play a running back against the Jets?
Nah.
Yeah. All right. Dolphins, Chargers. This is a game where I like all of the Chargers. I think Rivers is okay. I like Tyrell Williams. I like Dontrell Inman. I like Gates more if Henry's out. Hopefully Henry is out and you can use Gates again. I like Melvin Gordon a lot. I think he's one of the top plays. I like Jay Ajayi okay, but I think there's some game flow concerns and Jarvis Landry looks to be a little injured. Where are you at on this one? This is a tough one to like come to a full conclusion on.
I really like Jay Ajayi.
You really like him?
A lot. Yeah.
So my concern with him is he does not really catch passes. They use Damian Williams in that role, and they are a 5-point road dog. I think that's a concern.
Yeah, and San Diego's also been getting up more of their running back production, like 2 opposing running backs through the air than on the ground. Yeah. So like that is definitely relevant for this matchup. Still, I just think if we're projecting touches, and I think he's going to be like a top 3, and I think he's going to do well with it. That running game looks awesome. That offensive line is finally healthy, and it looks amazing. And Jai looks like a banger. Yeah, I'm on him. I also like Melvin Gordon too for a lot of the same reasons.
Yeah, I like Ajayi, but I'm going to play Melvin Gordon for $100 more.
I think his matchup's a little tougher.
For Gordon? You're saying for Gordon?
Yeah. Miami's been stout against running backs, right?
But I think you also can project him for way more passing game work. I mean, he's seeing all of the work. Like 4-7-7 targets. I don't know. I just have a hard time not using him. Melvin Gordon's like this year's Devonta Freeman. People are like, it's gonna slow down, but like it's not. But yeah, Ajayi,
I also think Ajayi is like that too.
Yeah. I think he's similarly. It's just the knock from
all right, and so he has Ajayi has targets over the last 3 weeks, but Miami won all those games.
Right. Yeah.
And partly because he's rushing at an insane level of efficiency, against like pretty decent run defenses. Like Buffalo's not terrible. The Jets, he put up over 100 against them. I think there's a chance that he gets an increased receiving workload too. He did see 4 targets last week, which is encouraging.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible, but I would say if you're like projecting him for targets, it's like 3.
He also did something like historic and unprecedented in 2 of his last 3 games. You need exposure to him, and I guess Melvin Gordon for the same reason from a fantasy perspective.
Yeah, I don't think you can use Jay Ajayi in cash games. He's definitely a tournament play. I just don't think you can use running backs who don't catch passes in cash games. That's my only knock for him. But yeah, they're definitely both in play for tournaments. Gordon's a great cash game play if you can fit him with David Johnson. Tyro with Travis Benjamin out, it's like Dontrell Inman is like $3K, something like that. I don't know exactly how cheap he is on DK, but he's really cheap. Yeah, $3,400. He saw 9 targets last week. He saw 7 the week before when Benjamin left early. In both games. It's hard to fade a guy getting 3,400 who's getting 8, 9, 10 targets. And the Dolphins have bad cornerbacks. And then Tyrell Williams is going to probably see an increased target volume, probably 7, 8, 9, 10 targets, and he's 5,700. And in his 2 games, not against Denver over the last 4, he has 24 and 18.5 DraftKings points. And then if Henry is out, Gates should see 8, 9, 10 targets again, and he's 3,900. Do you like all 3 of these guys? Is there someone you don't like out of this group?
No, I think you said that really well. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like Inman. I think Inman is a guy who gives you a lot of savings. People are going to want to play J.J. Nelson and the wide receivers for the Chiefs, but I think Inman is your saving guy for cash games. Don't think he has a lot of upside. He's kind of like a catch and fall kind of guy. Anything else you want to talk about in this game?
Nah.
Okay. All right. 49ers at the Cardinals. So this is like play all of your Cardinals. And then on the Niners, maybe Dwan Harris if Carlos Hyde is out again. And then Cardinals defense is like the top projected defense for sure. And if you're not playing David Johnson in cash games, you should not play cash games this week. Any other thoughts on this? I think we need to talk, I guess, Fitz, Palmer, J.J. Nelson mostly.
Yeah, so I think Carson Palmer is an interesting GPP play this week. He could be used as a leverage play off of David Johnson, who's going to be insanely highly owned. All right, let's backtrack. We should start with David Johnson. David Johnson is going to be insanely highly owned, and really he should be. He's leading all running backs in fantasy points per game. He's playing at home. He's favored by 14. He's up against a San Francisco defense that's giving up the most fantasy points per game to opposing running backs. San Francisco has given up 3 of the top 15 fantasy running back games this season. No other running back appears on that list twice. Johnson's an amazing play. He really is. And for cash, 100% easy, done. Probably 100% to Arizona defense as well. In tournaments, it gets trickier. And this is something that me and Johnny are going to probably have a debate on. Do we want to just treat it as a free square, go 100% ownership, go 100% to Arizona defense, call it a day? Concerns here, he's been amazing. He has one of the highest floors. He's up against a defense super vulnerable. Something interesting is in week 2, he was out carried by Chris Johnson, something like 16-4 after the first quarter. The first quarter ended with the score tied 0-0. I wasn't, and then they scored 24 points. I wasn't sure if that was a product of the blowout, or it was a product of Bruce Arians kind of the reports after that maybe he wasn't running the right routes or something, and it was kind of like a punishment. I don't know. That's a reason to fade him. There's reason to fade him because if he gets hurt in the first quarter, then guess what? You're just up on possibly 65. Johnny, what are you thinking here?
So yeah, I think if you're playing like 100 tournament lineups, there's merit to using him on like 75% of them. I think that's where you want to land. The odds that he doesn't pay off 3x salary are like close to zero. I mean, he's probably the highest projected possibility of hitting 3 times his salary like this season. Outside of like a 3K free running back like Devontae Booker or something. But he's in a similar spot to Devontae Booker. He's just 5K more than Booker was that week. The thing with him is like, how often does he hit 5 times his salary? So that's where, when a player hits 5X is when you are dead for not having him. A guy who's that highly owned. So he needs like 40, 42 points. How often does he hit that? I think probably maybe 40, 50% of the time he's going to hit that. And I think, so it's if you're in like a 1K 100-person qualifier, like you put him in your lineup. But then if you're in these like huge field tournaments, where like first place gives you a qualifier, there's 100,000 people, whatever. Yeah, put him on half your lineup, something like that, 75%. But I mean, he's like the most easily projectable to smash this year, I think. I mean, David Johnson has had 38 and 36 points against. I mean, he had 36.5 against San Francisco when he was in San Francisco. I don't see why he's not going to do like the same exact thing again. So
yeah, dude, he's an amazing play, 100%. Like, probably the best, easiest common sense play of the season. One thing that's good about this though is o'clock Eastern time game, which means like if you had a bunch of guys going in the game and like a few of them busted or like lineups not looking too good, then definitely pull David Johnson out, make some changes, maybe even throw in Ellington, get a little crazy, whatever you want to do, pivot to someone else and just pray he busts. Like, football's a high variance sport. You never really know what could happen. I also like the idea of playing Carson Palmer this week. Because I think he's going to go kind of low owned, despite having like the highest peak, super high pace of play against San Francisco, a bad defense, and like if David Johnson scores any points through the air, that's free points for Carson Palmer too. I do like JJ Nelson. He's just so cheap. He saw 12 targets last week. He's going to be the starter. He's going to get it again. He's going to get 2 touchdowns. Probably not. Probably don't even think he's going to get 1. He's still a little risky because he's kind of like the skinny, fast freak, deep speed guy. He's kind of like John Brown his rookie year is what I'm kind of how I'm treating him. But he's still at that price tag. I like him a lot. Johnny, you
I think the biggest enemy for David Johnson is the Cardinals defense. If they have like a pick 6 or something like right away, that helps David Johnson early, but that also increases his chances of not playing like the third or fourth quarter. And then Palmer, there's little reason for Palmer to have to throw the ball in this game. We look at, Drew Brees was a great play against the 49ers because he has no defense. The 49ers are not going to move the ball on the Cardinals. I mean, the Cardinals are 14-point favorites. This is just insane. So the idea of playing Palmer and David Johnson to try and get all the points is fine, except that I just don't see many scenarios where Palmer is going to have to do all that much. I don't think you should ever be projecting Palmer to throw for 300 yards in this game. And if your quarterback's not going to get 300 yards on DraftKings, they're not going to have the ceiling that you want them to have. I don't know. What do you think on that?
So I just pulled it up. I mean, I'm not like going all out on Carson Palmer. I think he's a great contrarian play. I think it makes sense. They really could smash. They could go up 3 touchdowns early. But I just pulled this up. Outside of that week 2 game, David Johnson has all of the Cardinals' fourth quarter carries.
Yeah.
There is a chance that what?
They don't give a shit.
Yeah, dude. I think there's a chance that they just don't give a fuck and like they're up by 40 and David Johnson's like breaking like getting J.J.'s 400 yards in one game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, dude. Like his ceiling is like there is no ceiling. It's dude, like endless.
It's so tough to fade him this week.
Right. I mean, dude, against Seattle, he had 33 carries and 13 targets. It's like bananas.
It's obscene.
Yeah. So, all right. Enough about Gordon. I think, or not Gordon, DJ. You definitely want to not have 100% of him because he's going to be so highly owned. But you want to have more than 50% of him, I think. And then Fitzgerald is going to be a popular play. He's just not a guy I get excited about. He's not going to go over 100 yards, I don't think. I keep saying this about these old guys, and then they like burn me. But I don't think he's cleared 100 yards this season. He's definitely the top red zone option. He does have 14 and 11 targets over the last 2 weeks, but those are against 2 teams that they couldn't run the ball on. They weren't having success running the ball on the Seahawks or the Panthers, so they were throwing it. So in games where they had to throw it, he only had 70 and 74 yards on 14 and 11 targets. I don't think he gets 14 targets this week. I don't think they're going to need to throw the ball that much. That's why I'm not excited about J.J. Nelson. I don't know why they need to throw the ball downfield when they're probably going to be way ahead. But with Nelson being 4K, it only takes one 30, 40-yard touchdown for him to like pay off his salary. So interesting, not in love with him, though. Definitely has more upside than Dontrell Inman. And if you can fit Cardinals D, just play them. I mean, if they score 20 points this week, like they have a pick 6, then you're like so fucked in cash games if you don't have them. Anyone else we want to talk about? Dwan Harris in a GPP?
Yeah, maybe. Is Carlos Hyde's not playing?
He's like questionable. I'm not sure exactly. Yeah, and then on the Andre Ellington thing, like
there's going to be some garbage time for the 49ers.
Right. Yeah, and Harris should catch passes and stuff. But I'm just not in on the Andre Ellington thing. This would be like the first time this year that Ellington gets like legitimate relief time. I'm just not really digging it. Maybe you put him on one of 100 lineups, something like that too. But no. So next game?
Yeah.
All right. Cowboys Steelers game. So this one, the Steelers. So the thing that bothered me all week, I was kind of in on Ben. I wanted to play Ben a lot. I wanted to be on the Steelers a lot. And then the line moved under 3. So that's a big indicator that Vegas is not secure in a team being the winning team. So it's now the Steelers by 2.5. They pretty much are getting that because they're at home. This is going to be a close game. The Cowboys limit other teams' ability to run plays. Not sure who I like on the Cowboys, though. I do think Antonio Brown is interesting against Morris Claiborne, but I think there are other good plays at wide receiver this week. But I, am more secure in Antonio Brown than I am in, I don't know. Actually, I'm not all that secure in him. I don't know what to do with this game, man. Where are you at?
I like Ben.
I like him.
I'm not crazy in love with him. We know how amazing Ben is when he's home versus the road. But Dallas has that slow, grinding pace of play. I kind of like Eli Rogers this week. I want to say a little bit, maybe.
He didn't play,
and I like, and I like Cole Beasley a little bit, but I'm not crazy about this. The next matchup, though.
Yeah, we'll get to that one in a second. But I mean, it's like I think you can play Zeke, but just remember that we saw Zeke. He has ceiling concerns. They don't throw him the ball. That's a problem for a running back ceiling when he costs $7,900. I think the amount of times that Zeke outscores David Johnson are like close to zero on this week. The Steelers play tougher running defense at home, and especially when Ryan Shazier's in the lineup, he's back. That week, the Jay Ajayi just torched them. Shazier did not play, and they were on the road. Big Ben is way better at home. He's way better the following week after the week that he comes back from an injury. We've seen that over and over. He just always has a rusty game, and then he kind of breaks out. Eli Rogers was great last week. Sammy Coates is back to being Sammy Woat. And yeah, I think Beasley is interesting. Not all that excited about Dez, but I think you can make the case for him now that he's become really cheap. And I kind of like Dak a little bit in this game. No one's really talking about him.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So,
but he was highly owned on Thursday.
Was he really?
Yeah, that was surprising to me. He was the second highest owned quarterback behind Mariota.
Huh. Okay. Yeah, I think he's more expensive than Mariota on DraftKings, but I think he's a similar play to Mariota. High scoring game.
Mm-hmm. He was more expensive on Aces too, which is surprising.
Yeah. So, like Dak, probably the most of the Cowboys players. And then I think Ben and Brown are good plays. I'm not as excited about Le'Veon. I think pace of play affects a running back the most versus wide receivers who, losing one target doesn't hurt a wide receiver, but losing 4 carries really hurts a running back. But like Bell, don't love Bell. Prefer Gordon. Any other input, or should we move to the Seahawks?
I'm just too excited about the next matchup.
All right, so Seahawks at the Patriots. I think Tom Brady is probably the top GPP quarterback play on the slate. I also like Russell Wilson. Jimmy Graham is a good play. Doug Baldwin is a good play. The Patriots passing defense is they're not good, but a lot of people think they are good, so they aren't going to play Seahawks pass catchers. Not really all that interested in Procise. People are really talking about him. Patriots have an elite rushing defense. Procise has looked kind of iffy at best. Russell Wilson doesn't really throw to the running back, so this idea that he's going to come out and see 10 targets, not really interested in that. But what I really like is the Patriots side of the ball. I like Brady. I like Gronk. Edelman, since there's not going to be any Hogan. If Dion Lewis is not going to play, I think he might be projecting to not play this week. It seems like James White is definitely in play. And then a really deep sleeper, if you want to go down the list, is Malcolm Mitchell. If he plays, probably assumes the outside role that Chris Hogan is going to leave off the field. Danny Amendola doesn't play outside. So what are your thoughts on this one, man? I know you got a lot to say.
Bro, I just want to game the hell out of this matchup. I'm just so excited about it. I think it's going to be a high-scoring shootout. Brady, Russell Wilson all went low-owned on Thursday. All of the pass catchers went super low-owned on Thursday. Julian Edelman, only 2%. Seattle struggled against slot receivers this season. Rob Gronkowski, 8%. Seattle's vulnerable against tight ends. Martellus Bennett, less than 1%. And then Jimmy Graham, only 5%. Doug Baldwin, only 3%. The Patriots are giving up the second most fantasy points per game to opposing slot receivers. Procise, only 1%. That's definitely going to jump, but I like the idea of playing him too. With either quarterback, really, for Russ Wilson, it's the free fantasy points every time he dumps the ball off to him. For Brady, if they're playing catch-up, Wilson could be passing to him a lot. Agree is not my favorite play of the week, but, he's in play for sure. You actually were the one who pointed it out to me first, is that average in all passing stats except for sacks, where they rank 21st. They rank 28th in PFF pass rush grade. They faced no good quarterbacks this season. Ryan Tannehill put up his highest scoring game this season against them. Brock Osweiler, Charlie Whitehurst, and Cody Kessler, Landry Jones. Andy Dalton without Eifert was 1 point away from his season high. Tyrod Taylor and EJ Manuel put up 19.5 against them. So if you schedule adjust it, it comes out to the Patriots giving up the 7th most average points against over expectation to opposing quarterbacks. Russell Wilson looked amazing last week. He didn't have too many rushing attempts, but his average time to throw in the pocket was 2.82, which was by far the highest this season, kind of showing off how much more mobile he was. The Seahawks have kind of abandoned the run. They're averaging just 11 carries per game over the past 2 weeks, as opposed to 22.2 in the 6 games prior. Tom Brady is playing the best football of his career, which is crazy, and he's blowing everyone else away since returning in week 5. He leads all passers in passer rating, PFF grade, yards per attempt, touchdown percentage, interception percentage, fantasy points per game, fantasy points per dropback, second in completion percentage. It's just, I don't know. I think they both go off. I'm really excited. The question is, who do you stack him with? I was talking to the great Run for Johnny this morning, and he kind of brought up the same question. We're going to do a lineup generator kind of thing, Johnny, but you do have to agree it's going to be tough figuring out who to play. I think we'll want to do quarterback, at least one receiver, and then at least one receiver on the other team. Probably something like Brady, Gronk, Baldwin, or Wilson, Baldwin, Edelman, something like that. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Do you want to stack the F out of this game?
Yeah, I think this is a good game to stack. I think it'll be high scoring. I think this has a better chance to hit its over-under total than the Falcons, the Eagles, or the Broncos, Saints. This is two teams that are struggling against the pass and playing really well against the run with elite quarterbacks and elite pass catching options. Brady is playing out of his mind. James White, maybe Dion Lewis back if he has him. Gronk healthy. He has Bennett. It's tough to pick out who you want. Obviously the number one stack you want to do is Brady Gronk. Seattle is bad against the tight end. But then, Baldwin and Graham on the other side. And I think you should probably have some exposure to Russell Wilson this week as well, because, in catch-up mode, playing catch-up with the Patriots, he's going to put points on the board too. So this is a good game, man. I'm excited about this. Seattle's looked kind of bad against the pass the last couple of weeks.
I think the only thing that could make this bust is if either Brady falls back down to earth, which whatever, or what if just Blunt just vultures all of the touchdowns? I always talk about Blunt when the Patriots are favored by 7 or more, and they're favored by 7.5 this week. Are you worried at all about Blunt?
No.
All right, good.
Nope.
Nice.
The thing is, though, is 75, 80% of the tickets are coming in on the Patriots, and that line is not moving, man. this is going to be a good game, I think. Total's going up. It's gone up half a point.
It reminds me of that Seahawks Steelers game that I stacked the fuck out of last year. That went off.
Yeah. This game should be really, really good. So everyone in play. Not excited about Precise. Anything else?
Nope.
All right. So last game. This is another one that I really like. The Bengals at the Giants. Fairly high over under. I think it might keep going up. And I like Dalton. I like Eifert. I like AJ Green. Although I will like him less if the Giants have declared Eli Apple to be benched. He's their worst cornerback, and Green should get like half of his snaps against him if Apple plays and starts. And then I like Eli and Beckham. I like Beckham a lot. And I think if Cruz is out, I think you can play Sterling Shepard. And I don't like any of the running backs in this game. What do you think?
Yeah. So Pat Thorman does that snaps and pace of play article every week. It's really good. Highly recommend it. He talked about this matchup. He thinks it's going to be super fast paced, meaning super good for fantasy. I think that's good. I think that's has me excited still as a Giants fan. Don't really ever want to play the Giants. Just kind of my way of hedging against them in case they suck. You just be like, oh, well, I didn't play anyone. Yeah, I agree to some extent. Giants are actually decent defense this year. Eli Apple's trash, yes. His backup is trash as well. But as a whole, that secondary is great. DRC is fantastic. Janoris Jenkins has been fantastic. Even Collins, their safety this year. The Giants rank top 6 in opposing yards per carry and opposing passer rating. They're the only other team besides Seattle to do that. They're getting pressure to the quarterback. I'm not super in on AJ Green, or at least not as high on him as I am on Tyler Eifert.
Yeah,
who is just I'm a super Tyler Eifert fan. So week 7 he came back from injury, played 25% of the snaps. Week 8 he played 84% of the snaps. He was fantasy's top scoring tight end of the week. He saw 11 targets. He caught 9 passes for 102 yards and a touchdown. It was PFF's highest graded tight end game of the season. Those 11 targets were the most of his career. You've heard me talk about what he did last season. Historic numbers in the red zone. Historic numbers in terms of efficiency. Andy Dalton's passer rating when targeting him. Really insane. And he's up against the Giants, who last season gave up the second most fantasy points per game to opposing tight ends. They rank a little bit better this year, but they're still allowing the most targets to tight ends this season. It's just a great matchup for one of the best tight ends in the game. And yeah, I like it. I want to do it.
Yep. Agreed.
And honestly, I'd be okay with a lineup that had Tyler Eifert at tight end and Jordan Reed in the flex.
I guess so. I'm not as in love with Jordan. I like Jordan Reed a lot. Not as quite as in love with him as you are. But yeah, I think this is a week that there's a lot of good tight end plays. I think Gronk is a good tight end play. I think Reed is a good tight end play.
Even Will Ty's fine. Bengals have been susceptible against tight ends, and Larry Donnell was a healthy scratch last week.
Yeah, I mean, if Donnell's out again, then yeah, you can consider Ty. I mean, he's the bare minimum, but he's been kind of like bad this year. And then yeah, so the Eli Apple thing is what like you need to find. If Eli Apple is going to start, then I like AJ Green. If Eli Apple is getting benched and they use Leon Hall in the slot, DRC on the outside, and Jenkins on the outside, then AJ Green is not a good play. Just depends. That's something you got to pay attention to. But I think this game is going to have a lot of points scored. And and Eifert and Beckham are the guys who I'm really interested in. And then I think you can use Eli. The Bengals are actually like a really bad defense this year. So, but I just want to. I don't think the Giants get pressure all that much. I think they only have like 10 sacks or something. So that's why I kind of like Dalton, though the corners are good. Anything else?
Nah.
All right, man. Well, that's it for this slate. Load up on Melvin Gordon again. He's always in play every week. Stack the Seahawks Patriots game in tournaments. Just want the Elite Lemonade Dynasty Football League shirt.
Oh, I get the Power Hour shirt on. Woo!
Yeah. So kickers. EOM. There's like play cat and zero and then log out.
Yeah, that's right.
I think that's kind of where you need to go. I think there are like, I guess, a couple other kicker plays, but I'm not really all that excited about them compared to cat and zero. Let me pull this up here. I think the New Orleans kicker, Will Lutz again, is interesting. And then Mason Crosby. But cat and zero, I think, is the nuts. You got any other kickers you like, man?
Nah, cat and zero.
All right.
The cat.
Yep. All right. Well, it's been fun. You can find Scott on Twitter at Scott Barrett DFB. You can find me on Twitter at John Proctor DFS. And that's it, guys. Shoot us some questions on Twitter. We'll try and get them answered. And good luck.